This is my Marchant 716. It's made by Smith Corona Marchant. I don't know too much about it, but looking it up online, it seems to have first been sold in 1969. If you look them up, they seem fairly similar to a few other machines of that era, and that's because this is actually made by Toshiba in Japan and was licensed out to a few different brands for manufacturers. So they all are functionally very similar, but have an exterior design that is slightly different. Particularly interesting is it is a Nixie tube display with 16 digits, and it has 2 memory registers. However, it seems on my particular machine, register number 2 is broken in some way. You can see as we recall it, the decimal place just kind of jumps around on screen. We can see for basic entry, something like a 1 plus 1 equals 2 are done with an infix interface, and then subsequent entries are done with just a 1 equals, sort of like a postfix, which I think might be an adding machine interface thing. I'm not too familiar with it, which is a little confusing because to do subsequent operations with multiplication or division, you would then do an infix interface continuing. So then we would do times 2 equals 8, or 8 divided by 2 equals 4. But then we would go back to postfix for continued entries of addition. The other interesting thing is toggling on subtraction now turns the plus equals button into the subtraction button. So we would do 2 equals, and we would actually be subtracting 2, and then subsequent usage of the subtraction button then becomes addition. So 2 plus 2 plus. A pretty confusing interface, I would say. I'm not sure the decision-making process that led to that, or if it was a result of the electronic limitations or something, but not the standard you would see on subsequent machines. We can clear the registers with the C button. We can see up here that there's a decimal value selector. So I've had it set to 0, but if we set it to 2, then subsequent entries change it to a value with 2 decimal places in the display. So we could do 25.25 and add that, and now we have that carried forward. And we can change that up as well, or up to all the way up to 9. So by entering 1.1, it actually moves it all the way across. The memory buttons work pretty much as you would expect with a more modern calculator as well. So if we put a number into the memory, then added, we can see we now have a result of 20, but if we recall memory 1, it's still at 10. However, if we did 10 and then added that to the memory, we can see we've added to the memory. Same with subtraction from the memory stored value, and we can simply recall the stored value. We can also clear. So now recalling it is 0. And one of the interesting things we can do here as well is turn on A1. Unfortunately A2, because the second memory register on this machine doesn't function correctly, isn't a good example. But what A1 allows us to do is turn the memory register into a running total of our primary calculations. So if we do 50 times 2, the result is 100. And if we do 700 divided by 7, the result is also 100. And we can see that it's actually added those two results. So when we recall the memory, it's giving us 200, which is 100 plus 100. Another couple of buttons that you may not recognize on a more modern machine is the register exchange. So if our entry is 2 times 5, we can actually go and recall the first entry, which was a 2, and exchange those registers back and forth. We can also turn on constant entry if we wanted. On a more modern calculator, this might be performed by doing the input of the operator twice and then just hitting equals for as many times as you would have a repeated entry. On this machine, we would toggle K down, and then if we wanted to say have a repeated multiplications of 2, we could do 2 times 5, and then the result is 10. Hitting it again will give us 20, 40, 80, 160. Over here, there's this RO switch with a down arrow and an up arrow. I have yet to figure out what that does. If anybody knows, please comment, because I'm very curious as to what that does. I have yet to figure it out. The other thing, and I'll get into this in a future video with some of the quirks of this machine, is there's a CR selection on the decimal selector, and I'm not sure what that is for either. It's seemingly broken on this machine as well, but because I don't know the intended functionality of that, I couldn't say for sure if it's working or if I just don't understand what it's supposed to be doing. That's about it for the basic functionality of the Marchant 716. I'm hoping to do a future video on some of the quirkiness of its operation, as well as another where we take a look on the inside of the machine. Thank you for watching.